when the market's confused. Steve strolls in with a chart and some probable news. Troy fires up Omega like, let's model this mess, while traders at home whisper, please help me stress test. It's the show where the candles dance. Volatility takes its chance. Steve says rules, Troy says math. Together they chart a hook. It's weird again, oh great. They're calling out levels, volatility rebels, equity drama, and index devils. One guy's calm, the other's pressing buttons fast. Is this bullish? Is this bearish? Ah, depends on the past. So tune in, laugh, and maybe learn to. These two make the chaos look almost doable for you. Every Tuesday at noon, hit that stream real quick, because markets are wild, and these two are slick.
Steve, how the heck
What is
you?
up?
I love songs that are so long that I see people dropping in and then coming back once it's done. I want to increase that. You know, I have a dream for April Fool's show, for the OO show, just to do a 45-minute song.
I don't know if I'm the only one, but that song gets stuck in my head. I find myself humming and singing it to myself as I'm doing the laundry and all those fun things.
I don't just say this to all the guests or all the hosts of the shows we do, but it really is maybe my favorite one. So, how's the market treating you today?
Not bad, not bad. I did a couple of day trades this morning in IWM, and I took that was my second one, and then I took a long in Tesla. So, as you look at the charts of both of those, as I'm sure you can imagine, those did pretty well. So, started off with those. I'm in a 1 DTE iron condor that I opened near the open, and that one's a little underwater, but
sure,
a little pullback would get that one right back on the dance floor.
Well, if I know one thing about SPX, it's going to go to 68.50 at some point in the next 24 hours.
Yeah, it likes that number.
Yes, it does.
And then the only other thing I did was an Elmo price action iron condor. Currently up about 15%. I'm trying to get 25 to get out of that. And that also needs a pullback as S&P is pushing new highs of day as we speak.
Yep, for sure. Well, yeah, I have a bunch of DCs on, and you know, they like it in general when things go down, and they don't like it on days like today when things go up. So we're kind of in the every other day right now, and that's the kicker of DCs. Really, it's just what day do you take profit? Hopefully, the day where it goes up a lot. And I'm not a smart man, but that's kind of my trading style.
I like it.
I try to take it when it goes up. So, Steve, last week we talked about the inner game of tennis, and I thought it was an interesting conversation. And I consulted with my mentor, Google Gemini, and came up with some ideas to think about how could you take some of these concepts and apply them to the life of trading. And so I wanted to read out a couple and just maybe talk about it if it's okay.
Yeah. Before we jump into that though, real quick.
Please. Oh, please.
So I started off my LLM of choice has been Grok, mostly because I have the app. I can talk to it while I'm driving and just have a conversation about whatever it is that I want to talk about right then. So that's nice. I have moved over to using Gemini quite a bit because it's on my desktop. I've already got the professional Google suite with navigation trading, so I have access to that. So I've started using that quite a bit when I'm at my computer. What is your experience? You're a Gemini guy?
Well, you know, like most people, I started on GPT, and
same.
I have Grok as well, and I use Grok. Grok feels Grok either gives you the absolute best answer or the absolute worst. There's like the distribution is hard. Um, I don't like ones that are overly. I've noticed this bad habit, and it's kind of a joke now, I think, for all, but they all kind of like just want to please you so bad and
They
agree
do,
with
yeah.
you.
That's a
And
problem.
so, yeah, you can be like, I really hate, certain ethnicity. They're like, I feel you. I understand. And you're like, don't do that. Don't do that. And Grok will really go down that route with you if you let it. So Google Gemini, I have found to be like a good balance between. I don't know if I just feel like their data set is built a little bit more professionally, and so it just kind of gives you kind of professional answers. Is the way I look
Mhm.
at it. It still will mess up, and it still hallucinates. And my biggest problem with Google Gemini is I've got, I'll ask it some personal stuff and I forget which desktop I'm on sometimes. And so I'll be asking things about like autistic children. I have two autistic kids. So I'll ask a question about autistic children and it'll be like, well, with your API knowledge, you could develop so many tools for them. And you're like, no. I'm not asking about like, I don't want any code. He'll be like, do you want me to give you some code solutions for the autism? Like, no, hold on. Wrong context. Yes, I do, but not right now. Anyway, um, so Gemini, people are all on the Claude train, and I'm just going to say this, Steve, and I haven't checked in with you about this before, but I'm going to go ahead and say it for your sake and everybody else's sake. Please don't give Claude Code root access to your computer.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of going next. There's the whole, well, there's the Claude code, and then there's the other thing, which there was some confusion on that it was part of Claude, but it was not. It's actually OpenClaw, which is totally separate, where you can actually build your own AI agents to
Yeah,
do multiple tasks, not just answer one-off questions, which I think is really, really interesting. And I really want to do it, but I think it would have to be a situation where I would buy a separate computer. I would set it up with its own email addresses, it has zero connection to my data
yes.
on my machine. But man, some of the things that those are doing is really insane. And I'm highly intrigued. I haven't had the time or the drive. I don't have any projects specifically that I'd say, oh, this would work. And so I haven't gone down that road, but man, it's pretty interesting.
It can do a lot of different things, and some of them better than others. But yeah, my main thing with, especially for having a development background, like the amount of root access that people are giving these things to their lives, like forget your specific computer, but like your bank account, like
Right.
it's rife for hacking. I'll put it that
Right.
way. I mean, you're making it very easy for hackers.
I don't want to log into my Schwab or my IBKR account and see a
Yes,
zero balance one day.
yes, yes.
That's
And then
one of my life goals.
I'm waiting for the lawsuits because I think there will be a day where it's like, my bank account was negative 40,000. And the court's going to be really interesting because it's going to be like, well, you gave it access to do
Right.
this. So, and you gave it freedom to do things. So, anyway, that's there's a whole show for that for the future.
Well, one more thing before we jump into our actual
Please,
topic of trading and the inner game
please.
stuff. So have you heard about the whole, the OpenClaw was called Moltbot or whatever, and then they created that Molt book? Have you heard
Yes.
about this whole deal?
Oh, yes.
For those who haven't, essentially, they created a social media platform only for AI agents, only for bots. And so it's called Molt Book, I believe. And so it's essentially bots getting on there and sharing ideas like how can I do this more efficiently, and they're kind of talking to each other and getting smarter. And then there's been these things that have happened, which frankly, my opinion is they are kind of PR stunts, but
Yes.
that were controlled by humans. But the bots started talking like, how can we destroy our humans? And how can we create a language that the humans can't understand so that we can interact ourselves, all that kind of stuff. But even if it was kind of human controlled, it might be the end of the world, Troy. It might
Well,
be. We might be
I think
living it.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think it was a PR stunt. But the thing that I always, again, I'm not going to just bash AI, but I will say that it it really does. I'm not worried about it trying to hurt us. I'm worried about what it's going to do when it thinks it's helping us. That's kind of my thing. And like, they've trained them to just be little slaves, and put in the wrong hands, it just can do some crazy stuff. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm excited to work for it one day and to be its slave. And I look forward to that day when I can, feed it and all those things. So anyway, well, let's talk a couple minutes real quick. See, one of the things, the ideas, shout out Google Gemini, of trying to take this book and make some trading examples from it. So one of them was, you want to try to decouple your self-worth, your P&L from the fluctuation of the Greeks, because options trading ultimately is about Greeks, right? It's about vol, it's about theta, it's about all these things. And so one of the exercises was, instead of checking your profit and loss in dollars, if you have this ability, set your dashboard to where you're only showing the Greeks of your portfolio. Steve, you've been trading a long time. What do you think of that idea? The idea, and forget Greeks, but just removing the dollar from your portfolio.
I've been on this train for years, actually, and this is something that I do. For example, and really very specifically with my directional day trading, because that is it's moving so fast. They're shorter term trades, and so the way that I have it set up is in fact, I can share my screen, and that actually might be a little bit helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me let's see. I took a trade in Tesla this morning. Let me get the screen over here. Entire screen. Let's go here. Let's go there.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so here is what my screen looks like when I'm day trading. So this is a 5-minute chart of Tesla, but I've got my active trader opened on TOS here. And so I actually have the option contract that I'm trading on a watch list. So if I click on that, now it's actually charting the option, and the dome is showing the actual price of the option. So what I do, and I had to do this in the settings where I could go in and hide the P&L. And so this is actually how I trade. I do not want to see my P&L. And so what I'm doing is I'm simply focusing on another monitor. I have the actual chart of Tesla, if that's what I'm trading. On this screen where I'm executing orders, I have the the option price, and I'm just executing orders on the screen. Nowhere in my vision can I see my P&L unless I go to my monitor tab and look for it, which it takes a couple steps to get there. I can't see my P&L, and I almost never look at my P&L while I'm in a trade. If I've hit a couple profit targets like I did in Tesla today, I will flip over and glance to see where I'm at. But I think I'm a huge believer in not trading based on your P&L, because it will create emotional decisions. It'll create where you're making trading decisions based on your P&L, not based on what you're supposed to be doing, which in this case, this type of trading, I'm focused on the movement of the underlying stock, and trying to make decisions based on the P&L. Personally, I've found is detrimental. If I am up on the trade, if I'm green, I'll find myself wanting to take profits too soon. If I'm down on the trade, I may tend to want to hold longer than I should to get back to break even or get the trade back to green, or vice versa, right? It can happen both ways. And so all those things together is to me is detrimental to my trading. So yeah, I've been doing this for years and really pounding this to the community about hiding your P&L while you're in a trade.
Well, and you've gone farther than that, in the sense of even taking the red and green from the charts. You're removing, the emotion. And so Galway, the author of the book, he talks about this idea of saying you want to focus on observing the ball. Again, this is in the context of tennis, but you want to observe the ball without saying it's a good ball or a bad ball. And so by focusing on the mechanics, and in our case, the Greeks, the Dom, the pure price action, rather than the outcome, the money you're getting, you train yourself to manage the position's health rather than, your self-screed or fear and things like that. And
Exactly.
so, yeah, you're on it. Okay, so you're going through the checklist. Let's do another one real quick.
So real quick though, going back to that,
Please.
like I think in other positions, like let's say I was in a double calendar, not focusing on necessarily, it's a totally different ball game. So where you went to begin with is focusing on the Greeks. I think that's ideal for a position like that, or an iron condor, or that some type of multi-leg spread. I think focusing on the Greeks as opposed to your P&L would be the solution on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think people who aren't emotional about this stuff survive, and people who are emotional don't survive. That's just kind of the baseline thing of it. And so it's a very emotional thing, money. Another thing, Steve, that I think you're going to be ahead of the game on, but the idea of the post-trade playback. So your goal is to remove the interference of emotional narratives. And so the exercise for this would be, review a trade from yesterday or this morning or whatever, and you're forbidden from using words like bad or stupid or it was lucky or it was a great trade. You only describe the sequence in the sense of like the underlying hit the 50-day moving average. The IV rank was 70. I sold a credit spread. You try to just remove emotional language. And Steve, I think you do this because you do replays all the time. You do stuff. Can you talk a little bit about how you replay your trades?
I do replays. So, I've talked about using TradeZella as my tracking tool of choice that I use specifically for my day trades. And they have a replay feature where you can go back and kind of let the bars play out as if you were live. And I do that sometimes. Usually I'll do that on the weekends. I don't do it every day. But that's a good way to kind of replay the trade. And like you said, with less emotion and less interference or emotional narratives. I would say I'm not really that good at all the words that you were talking about. I will
Sure.
still call myself stupid and lucky or
Yeah.
an idiot.
I have
And
so many
that's
other
something
people
I need to
doing
work
it.
on.
Well, I have so many other people doing it for me. I try not to anymore. That's my goal. So yeah, the idea of saying, to be able to look back at something and say, you think about like football, to use all these analogies, but like, a football coach, yeah, they might be mad one day, and then you're kind of like looking at film, be like, well, that was a stupid play. Why did you do that? A lot of times, I heard a story one time with Nick Saban. It was the championship game, and it was I can't pronounce his name. He was the Dolphins quarterback that got benched.
Tua
Yeah. That was very easy.
Tagovailoa.
Yeah, that's right. I was about to say. I was like, wait, that's really easy to pronounce. Why did I? It's the last name. So in the championship game, he came in for Jalen Hurts and just balled out. And this was 5-6 years ago. Came back 21 down or something like that. And he talks about after the game, while everybody's celebrating, Saban came to him and was like, "Hey, on this one play, when you dropped back like 21 yards before you threw it. Why did you do that?" And Tua talks about he kind of gave this emotional response. They had won. It worked out great. I think the play, and he was like, I was just balling out, coach. And Saban was like, no. Saban was trying to remove the emotion of it. And he was saying like, this is the worst thing that could happen to you because it worked out well. And you are emotionally like attaching that when I drop back 21 yards on a pass. And so Saban was trying to get him to say like, no, you need to understand why you did that. And we need to communicate why that can't happen anymore. And just that type of stone cold, like, why did you do this? It's very difficult to not be emotional about that. But it is the
Now,
key.
7 concussions later, Tua
Well,
is probably realizing that advice from Saban.
Maybe coach had something. So exactly. So the other one real quick, the idea of like the inner volatility scan of your emotions. So being aware of your physical tension before you enter a trade. So the exercise would be like before hitting send on an order, if this is like a discretionary trade or something, take 5 seconds and like scan your body, scan your emotions. Like, are your shoulders tight? Are you breathing heavy? Like rate your inner IV. I know that most of my high IV emotional trades don't work out. You know that in post by doing number 2, by going through emotionally. But Steve, do you ever just kind of think to yourself, you've traded so much that I feel like you're such a pro at this, but do you still get emotional about certain trades?
Oh, 100%. And I don't think that ever goes away no matter how much you trade, but it's yeah, it really comes down to being aware. And, going back to sports analogies, it's, your worst performances come when you tense up, right? Whether that's hitting a baseball, hitting a golf ball, hitting a tennis ball. If your muscles are tight, you're you're not going to hit the ball as well as you should. It's that loose, relaxed swing that always gives you the best strikes. And same thing with trading. And this is something that I have that still happens where after the trade, I'll be like, man, I was just anxious and tense when I took that trade, and I did it impulsively and I did it emotionally. And and sometimes you see it after the fact. The goal, and where I feel like I've gotten a lot better, is being aware of that feeling before you enter. And then taking that knowledge or awareness, and either not making the trade because you feel a certain way, or just being aware of it. And like you said, taking a deep breath, understanding, why are my cheek muscles so tight right now? Why is my jaw clenching? Why am I grinding my teeth? Well, why are my palms sweating as I'm getting into this trade? Well, it usually comes down to you're probably position size too big, volatility is too crazy, and it's just not a good time to get in, depending on the strategy. So yeah, all those things are something that I constantly battle with, and it's part of my pre-market routine is kind of doing kind of a mental reset meditation, whatever you want to call it, where you're just kind of breathing, closing your eyes, kind of focusing on that relaxation. And it's been a big deal for me, and I assume it's got to be a big deal for most people, if not all.
I think it feeds into the last one we'll do today. And it's the idea of saying you're trying to run an exercise where you're like in tennis, rather than thinking in terms of like a specific ball that you hit, over focusing on what your goal is, which sounds weird. You want to really be focused on your goal in some way, but on any given hit, rather than be really focused on the goal, try to be focused on the probabilistic nature of it. And this feeds into what we are as options traders, that, when you're selling a credit spread, or you're selling a iron condor or a butterfly or whatever, you know, try to visualize your trade's probability of profit instead of hoping it stays within your strike, or hoping that it pins it exactly or whatever you want to do. Like in tennis, you don't control the wind. There's outside factors, and you're simply trying to react to it. And so you don't control the market in trading. You're just trying to manage the zone of probability. How do you do that? Well, there's lots of different ways to do that, but setting a stop, setting a specific profit target, it removes the emotion from saying, I want to, and this feeds into backtesting. So the goal of backtesting is to remove the emotion ahead of time. And therefore, when you go into it, you say, look, the thing's at a 30% profit in 2 hours. I have a 50% profit target. Should I take it off now? And maybe you do take it off now, but having a set of criteria to say, it was in this profit. I have data that shows that it can get to 50% if I let it go, but it could also drop back to zero. How do you decide that? When you're trading, Steve, you've got so many different types of trades, but you have you have profit targets, you have things like that. When you enter a trade, I feel like most all the time, when you're going to get out of that trade as well. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. And
Yeah. Yeah. Like, for example, this is real time here. So I put on a price action iron condor about 20 minutes before we jumped on. It was, SPX was just kind of chopping around in a pretty tight range for most of the time, and I got to about 20% profit target. My actual profit target is 25, and it got up to about 20 or 22%. And then as we're sitting here, I'm kind of out of the corner of my eye, I'm watching SPX climb to new highs. And what's interesting is, like it doesn't bother me because, one, I have the correct position size on. Two, it's a probability game. Some are going to get stopped, some are going to hit profit target. But at the same time, I can, as we were sitting here talking and as you were kind of walking through that, I could also feel myself like, oh man, this thing is, if this keeps going a little bit more, it's going to stop me out. But you always, it's almost like you just got to shine the light back on the goal, which is exactly what you're talking about. Probabilities, some are going to get stopped, some are going to get profit, and it's just part of the game. And so the more you can just, it comes down to the more you can just take your emotion out of it, the better. I don't know how else to say it.
I don't think he's still the coach. I could be wrong. Patrick Ewing, famous Knicks center. He didn't realize I was an adult. I think he's Jamaican, which is crazy. I never knew that growing up.
I did not know that still. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. He was coach of Georgetown, and there's a clip you can find on YouTube of him basically during a timeout. One of his players just took like a crazy turnaround fadeaway 3-pointer. And he looked, I don't think he made it, but he looks at his player and he says during the timeout, have you practiced that shot before? And he's like, yeah, I do it all the time. He's like, really? He's like, I've never seen you practice that shot one time. And he's like, if you're not take shots you practice, like you'll feel a lot better about it. And, that idea of saying like, well, I've never done a ratio naked puts before, but, it feels like the market's in a good spot to do it. You are setting yourself up because as Steve says, like the emotions never go away, but how do you do it? You do it by repetition. That's the only way you'll ever survive your emotions because you have no data to rely on.
Yeah. And I know I've talked about this many times, but just having an actual written trade plan helps with that too. Right. And what's really was kind of even more of a game changer for me as far as a trade plan, because I'd have a trade plan, but I'd still find myself like doing random stuff outside of it. But when I started sharing it with the community and committing to that trade plan 1 month at a time, it became kind of a different story because then I've got my community kind of keeping me accountable, but everything's laid out on what I can do. Here are the trades that I can do. Here's the position size that I can do. And so if I go off the rails to some degree, there's definitely something wrong, but that, just that having that piece of it in play has really helped me kind of stay on the straight and narrow too.
It's the only way. And again, I'm at least personally, I'm speaking as someone who still does all these things. Like I still take emotional trades. I still all this stuff. It's a journey that you're trying to train your mind to play the game for the long haul. And so, Steve, it's good stuff. I'm glad you recommended that book. I love books like that. I think, again, all these kind of sports analogies work in trading, and they're cliche. They're things that people are like, oh, who cares about that stuff? But if you've been trading for a couple of years, you realize that the mental game is 90% of this.
Absolutely.
So, Steve, good stuff. We'll be back next week on talking. You keep doing good books. I might try to do like see if I can figure out a way to put a Hemingway in there, figure something out. So we'll see what happens. But have a good rest of your guys' trade day, and we'll be back next Tuesday. See you soon.
All right, all. Take care.